There's something so fascinating about trains, their history and how it's defined the American spirit, our sense of expedition and exploration and travel. Many of the books here in my library are about obscure train lines that crisscross American landscapes. The stories that they tell are one of really deep interest to me. So when I saw a story on Twitter about a man who had rescued a train car and restored it to an Airbnb in the rural landscapes of Idaho, I was intrigued and I had to reach out. So, this conversation is with Webb French, a historian, a businessman in Deary, Idaho, who is basically restored a old train car from a train line in Idaho, and now you can stay in it, complete with a hot tub, a bathroom, and beautiful views across Idaho landscapes. So today, join me as we speak to Webb French and his story about how he turned a piece of history into a piece of unique lodging in Idaho.
We live, I've known the Palouse region of it's North Idaho and Eastern Washington. We're right on the edge of the Palouse, and then we're kind of right in between that and timber country. It starts to get into small hills and then mountains about 20 miles east of us. Lots of real good timber. Um, and there was a train the back the early 1900s. The Weyerhaeuser Corporation basically purchased millions of the acres of its timber, and the place was really just being settled at the time. And they put in a with the they built several very large sawmills and put in a train uh, that would connect all the local towns that were starting to spring up as a result of what they were doing, but also to haul the timber back to their mills. And then there's also, since it's wheat country, it also did haul some, wheat for farming. So, so it was probably 95% a freight railroad, but they did have two cars that they would run, I think, daily. And I think the total length of their track is, yeah, it's less than 60 miles. And it starts in Washington, comes into Idaho. It never did make it. It was the Washington, Idaho, Montana Railway. It never made it to Montana, and I don't think they ever planned on it. I think they were more trying to bolster their stocks with the bigger railroads. So, uh, the settlers come in. There's some of them are farmers. A lot of them are in the timber industry. There's a need for mail between these towns that sprang up along the tracks, and there's a need just to get back and forth for shopping. Uh, a good portion of the year, there's a lot of snow here, or else it's very muddy. So even with the automobile, um, in the early days, the train was the reliable way to get there. So they bought two brand new cars from American Car and Foundry in St. Charles, Missouri. Had them delivered out here, and they ran them into the from that. They bought them in 1908. Probably ran them into probably the 40s. And after the war, the boom in automobile travel really started wiping that out. So they surplus both cars. One of them they used as a cruise shelter for a while, and then it got burned. And the other one, according to the history book, was also a cruise shelter, and was eventually destroyed. There's kind of a history of the WINM, and so my neighbor, I live, right here by Deary, Idaho. My neighbor, he's a wheat farmer. He has, 1,000 acres or something like that, and he's an older man. He's in his 90s now. He's still alive. I see him almost every morning. He comes for coffee at our local bakery, and he called me because we'll get real heavy snows. He called me one winter and said, if you wouldn't mind, I need some help shoveling my roof. I'm afraid my barn's going to collapse and crush my train car. And when he said train car, that kind of, my ears perked up. I thought, what does he have a train car over there? Well, this car that supposedly had been destroyed in the 50s, the previous owner to his property had bought it, and they were feeding cows out of it out in the field for probably 20 years. They were just using it as a small barn. And when he bought the property, he had an appreciation for it. And he thought, I don't want to see this thing go to waste. So all the farmers around here use crawler tractors with tracks rather than rubber tire. They use both. Nowadays they use it, but back then they used crawler tractors. So he just put two logs under this train car, drug it up to his house into the barn, and it's there probably sometime from the late. Let's see, I'm going to say from the early '70s until 2019 when we pulled it out. So he was just sitting there in this barn. And at one point, he tried to make it into quarters for his hired hands, and he used it for some storage, but it mainly was just sitting there. And as I said in the article, it's a barn, so cats live in the barn, and they live in all throughout the barn, but they like the train car too. And shoveled it. I shoveled cat manure. In some places, it was 6 inches deep. It would be only in certain places it'd be back in the corner. It was bad. Uh, Everybody was worried in that X article what happened to the cats. It's a barn. In fact, when I said we're ready, he said, I want to make sure that I have a place for the cats. And he actually kind of had like a rabbit hutch, but he just basically made sure they're out. But the cats are still in, or at least in her progeny, are probably still in that barn. Um, you just don't find it's 100% wood. There's no steel structure underneath except for a truss system, but it's
Okay.
all wood. The flooring's wood, everything's wood except for the couplers on the end, of course, which is steel. And to find an old car like that in a barn in that kind of shape, you just don't find those every day. The funny thing is I went back to my office and I'm in business with Isaac, used to be part of it, but he does something different now, the one you read the post from. But another son was there in the office and I said, you would not believe it. Loyal has a train car sitting out there in his barn. And this particular son is not really into restoration or older things. He said, I've known about that for a couple of years, and I knew that if you heard about it, you'd drag it out to our place. So I never told you. So anyway, it was too late. So, so that's really how we came. It took me from the time I first saw it, it was at least 2 years before I could find a guy reliable to move it. And when I finally did, I found something very good, but we had several others flake out on us. Um, and so I said, well, this opportunity will probably only come along once in a lifetime. So we hauled it over there and initially didn't even know what we were going to do with it. I guess I should back up. I said to the farmer, who's a friend of ours, and he said, listen, if you ever decide to sell this, I would really like to buy it. He said, listen, at this time, he was probably in his late 80s. And he said, I'm getting older and I want to see that it goes to a good home and I'll sell it to you. So, um, it's really, we only moved it about, um, 3 miles from where it was. And in both cases, it was only like, um, half a mile to three-fourths of a mile from where the original tracks were that it ran every day. So it's an old, combination car. So it has passenger, freight, and mail. And this was the smoking car. Um, and it's still divided into those three partitions, which actually made it nice because I didn't want to change it a whole bunch, like walls out and things for adding things. And so I was able to use the three divisions. So the kitchen, sitting room is the old passenger room. The freight room, we did frame in a bathroom inside of it, and then it's also a part of the sitting room. And then the old mail room is the bedroom. And pretty much all of except for the ceiling in the passenger room, the walls, ceiling, everything, both interior and exterior, are completely original. We were able to restore it. It was in good enough shape to do that. It was in rough shape, but it still wasn't like rotten where you couldn't do anything with it. So it's about 99% original. All the floors are original, walls, ceilings.
Did
So
you
it's,
have
it's just it's
did you have photos that you were able to look in, like the archives of this researching that train line or the company, or did you have any access to like what the original inside looked like to restore it to that level?
I have an actual photo of the University of Idaho, which is just 20 miles from us, in their archives. has a picture the day it left the factory of the outside, and there's also at least one or two pictures inside. So I've got those. So yeah, and then I have some pictures from the owners back in the 50s when I've got a picture, at least one picture with a bunch of cows standing around it, and also a picture from another local guy at the day they moved it out to when it was going to become a barn. So there's an old truck hauling it through town here. So I've got some pictures throughout the years, but I do have some originals too.
How long did it take you to completely refurbish and renovate this thing to the point when you got it on your property and now it's ready for people to stay at? How long of a process was that?
We got it on our property in January 2020, and we rented it out on I believe September 1st was the eight full months from when we placed it till we rented it out. Of course, that was the year of COVID. We have a commercial construction business, and we did get shut down on a lot of things, especially that spring. And so it was actually kind of perfect for us that it's on our property. We just sat there working on it. We could just keep right on going, working.
What inspired you to turn this into lodging for other people to experience? Are you in that sort of business, or are your sons in this business where they have kind of flipped properties to new style accommodations and things like that?
We are now, but this was our initial stab into it. When we when he told me to sell me the train car, I didn't at the time know what I was going to do with it. I just knew I wanted it because I wanted to, preserve it. So then you start to think, okay, what do we do with this? And you get, museums that, especially small ones, they're hard to man. They're hard to get volunteers. They're hard to um, fund when you need to repair something. So I don't remember if it was myself or one of my sons, but the idea was, well, let's make it pay for itself, and we can still restore it where it's still around for people to see, but it's taking care of itself. And so I think it was within, I would have to say within the first month or two, or I think by the time we moved it, I'm trying to remember the timeline. By the time we moved it, we knew we were going to turn it into lodging. In that prior 2-year period was when we were thinking, what are we going to do with this? We know we want it. So then we branched off. Let's see, actually, one of my sons had built a small cottage on a lake that he was doing short-term rentals with, and he had done well. I think that actually helped to influence me in this area. So, and then from this, we branched out into, we restored the old depot, and there's an old barn we restored along the same lines, and providing a unique experience in a very rural area, real quiet area, absolutely beautiful area. But so that's how we got into lodge.
What's the reception been like? Is it been constantly rented? I mean, it's kind of, to me, seems to be one of the most, you've kind of set the stage for. It's in a really unique, it's not in a city per se. It's in a pretty hard to get to area. It's in this natural environment. What's been the reception like of people renting it and coming there, and what are they saying when they leave it?
Of course, as we were in the process of moving it, a friend of mine who does restorations mainly of old historic buildings called me, and he was working with a show, one of these, caving shows. It's called Restoration Road. And he said he and I, we both like history, and I had told him what I was up to, and he said, listen, they would like to film this. So they basically, even the final part of the movie, they filmed that until we were ready to rent it out. That gave us a ton of free publicity. So for about the first 2 years, it was booked up. They, not to say 90% of that was due to the show. It was booked up almost, I'm going to say 80, 90%. It dropped off to about 80, 70% the third year, just as the effects of the show wore off. But I have never, every single person who comes through there actually thanks me that for the restoration and the chance to get to stay there, and the fact that we made it available to people. And Of course, it's on top of a hill looking west. There's a wheat field down below you, and a lot of timber and some smaller hills. And it's extremely quiet where we live. Um, it's hard to get here, but once you get here, it's very restful, very, and just beautiful. So they constantly just rave just about how much they like it. And then, of course, we've got actually quite a few repeat customers. And I would have to say probably 40 of the 50 states are represented, and several foreign countries, and they came specifically to stay in the train car. So people have really liked it, and they really like getting to explore the area also. So
What do you think it says for American travel? I like to think that why I'm fascinated by travel is you could drive an hour from your hometown and find a new place that you've never been to, and that is travel in its essence. I feel like a lot of people don't look at travel that way. They think you have to fly on an airplane. Obviously, a lot of people might be getting, you're not an easy place to get to, but what has it opened up for people to explore the place you call home?
well, it's not like, again, like you're saying, we don't have Disneyland, anywhere nearby, or we've got we've got rivers, we've got trails, we've got incredible fishing, uh, hiking. Um, so people are into, getting in and seeing some beautiful country. And, but if you go to the west of us, you've got Moscow and Poland, and there's Moscow's University of Idaho. Poland has Washington State University. There are, especially Moscow, extremely good restaurants, a lot of neat people there, thriving farmers market. Um, so if they're into travel, uh, and getting an authentic taste of rural America in all its diversity and all the wonderful people who live there, and along with stunning scenery and beautiful weather. That's probably 50% of the people who come, and the other 50% love trains and want to stay in the train car. And I probably, if I had the thing in, you know, rural, wherever, I mean, sorry, downtown, or not downtown, but somewhere, they would go to it anyway. Although the added extra is it's in a beautiful setting, and it's neat, like you were saying. It's like there's obviously sometimes we stereotype and pigeonhole different parts of the country. Well, this is where you got to go to have fun, and how there's so many places around the country that sometimes we happen on by accident. That my wife and I one time were on a drive going somewhere that we had heard was really great. We pulled into a town along the way and ended up canceling our reservation where we were going and stayed 2 days in this town where we were. And then we've gone back and visited there probably 7, 8, 9 times, maybe 10 times or something like that. And we happened on it by accident. And I hope I don't miss some of those other type of opportunities down the road. So like you say, and, we're in the inland Northwest, but if you drive east into Montana, it's around every corner, there's another beautiful site. West to the uh, North Cascades, and all the way over to the Oregon coast. And there's just so I think that especially for those who are a little more adventurous, I think that American travel, there's a lot of response, and in a lot of cases, it's people who want to try to get away from the crowds a little bit. Because I'll just admit, we're a little bit of a backwater in that sense. It's a very rural area.
What's the closest town that you are near?
Deary, Idaho, it has 500 people. Train cars about 4 or 5 miles outside of there. And then, as I said, Moscow is about 35, 40 minutes to the west. It's right on the Washington, Idaho line. And so that's, that's 20,000 people, but they're actually maybe 25,000, but 15,000 or 10,000 of those are students at the U of I. It's almost half university, but it's a beautiful town, a nice walkable town. Has a beautiful downtown area. support the local businesses in that way. So it's not a sprawling city, and then it's surrounded by the police, wheat fields, farmland. So it's a wonderful place to be.
There's something really. I've done some travel in Montana and a little bit in Idaho. There's something about that part of the world where you have this this clash where you have the prairie that meets the
Yeah,
mountains, and it's just I love railroad history, and I love like some of the architecture, like the old grain elevators and things like
yeah,
that. And I feel like that's where you are right now. Is that correct? Is that kind of what this
yeah,
country looks like?
exactly. And a lot of older. It's like both dairy and a lot of the farmhouses and say Moscow. It's all the older architecture. It's 40s, maybe 50s, but a lot of it's going back into the 20s and 30s. Still, a lot of neat older architecture.
What so in considering Deary, I think that's an interesting town. What are a couple things you would recommend somebody that's staying at the train car? Where would you steer them in town? Like, is there a cultural place or a museum, a restaurant? Some like two or three things that they need to do on their Deary checklist.
Well, if they wanted to go for a hike, I tell them to hike to the top of what is called Spud Hill, which is basically above the town. I think it's about 4,500 feet, but you can see out into Washington. Beautiful, beautiful 360-degree view. The Pie State Bakery in town is open for breakfast and lunch. Wonderful place. And then it's open for once a month for a nightly dinner on Saturdays. That it's a reservation only that always fill up. Um, there's a neat new butcher shop that just opened up just up the street from the Pie State, where they're doing more of custom aging, custom cuts, and things like that. They're just getting started, but it's always worth stopping in there. For a museum, I drive over to Potlatch, Idaho. There's the old train depot over there has been preserved. I actually helped with that. It used to be the headquarters of the Potlatch Timber Corporation and the railroad, which is the same railroad that we're on. So it's a two-story depot and much larger than you'd expect in a town of its size, but they've done an incredible job of restoring it. They have some really good historical displays there, along with the small shop with, things related to the area and related to the line. Um, there's a lot of railroad grades around here that have been converted to rail trails for biking. There's two really nice ones, actually three. All of they're a blast. You can get way back. You know, some of it parallels the highway, some of it's down in canyons where you never would actually go. It's nice trails. So it just depends on the time of the year you came.
If I'm at the pie safe, what dish am I getting? What piece of pie am I getting?
Um, well, I'm not a pie person, but I like the raspberry Danish and I like the cinnamon roll. The pies are very popular. I just have never been, so I can't recommend which one to get. Um, so they got a great breakfast too.
And is there a historical fact or something that everybody in town kind of is like, that's the one thing that kind of anchors the town to a person, a fact that kind of is special to that town?
Well, it was founded by the railroad. It didn't exist before the railroad came in, and it's over the years. It's mostly the timber industry is what There's farming to the west, but I'd say 75% of those who are tied to dairy are tied to the timber industry, and that really is what has united them. I wouldn't. There isn't a single person I can think of. I the you do find here that people are not very transitory in the sense of most of the people you meet, their grandparents, their great grandparents were the ones who actually settled this place. So there's a lot of that type of history that ties all of them together. And it's very interesting because, I think on a at least monthly basis, I'll learn, oh, so and so's cousin, but you constantly learn connections in that way. So it's just a close knit community, really a very supportive community.
And did I read correctly? Kind of researching your background. Did you have a creamery or a cheese operation of some sort?
Yes, we still do. It's in the same building as the bakery. It's a separate because it's two separate businesses. But there's a large window we installed, so from in the bakery you can uh, watch the cheese, see the whole cheese floor and watch the process through every Monday. They start with a new batch of milk, turn that into curds, then put that into molds for hard cheese, or we do make soft cheeses, so that by the end of the week they're taking the wheels that they've made and putting them into age. We have three different aging coolers in the place, and so I and my wife and another fellow and his wife are partners.
Wow. I grew up in Wisconsin and I've done two documentary films about the dairy industry. I did one about the marketing kind of between California and Wisconsin, and then I just did one about a year ago about a fourth generation Swiss dairy farmer in Wisconsin who's trying to keep his farm alive. A lot of the farms there are closing. They
Yeah,
can't stay open.
yeah.
And it's kind of become a challenging play. I don't know if the dairy industry in your neck of the woods is the same or not.
The Idaho dairy industry really sprang up in big in about the last 30 years, and it's more of southern Idaho. We're kind of we're not north Idaho, but we're north central. They have it's probably big dairies there, and yeah, they do operate on very fine margins. The whole thing of the family dairy, like even just in the 80s, where I grew up in western Colorado, um, there were three or four small. Some of my friends' dads had dairies, and they had maybe 30 cows. Cows, I think they have 20, 30,000 cows in these dairies. My mom actually was from Wisconsin, and and uh, so Green Bay area. And I know that a lot of people have, if they want to preserve family type dairy, they've got to get into direct consumer with like the cheese, like we were doing. We had when we started, we were small. We had, I don't know, they have installed a small herding center, so they have three cows. And so we started with that, and we started actually through the Mossville Farmers Market. And we actually didn't set out to do this. We had excess milk, so we started making cheese, and then we started selling it. Um, and when you can sell direct to consumer, like at the farmers market, or eventually we bring to the place where we had our own, store here in town, that's a way that a smaller farmer can make it. Not all of them want to, hustle with that, because you got the farm to manage and then you have the retail to manage, and that's two completely separate animals. Um, so, but we do know Gary person, or that's their, trying to work on the direct consumer model, because otherwise they're running such fine margins in that bigger model that I feel bad for.
Yeah,
So
it's you got it 100%. The smart, it almost, I've never met it's not an industry. I'd say it's a job. I've never met somebody in a job vertical that requires so much knowledge of other areas like veterinary science, soil
yeah,
science. You understand the weather. You have to be a mechanic. You have to know how the animals work. I mean, it's insane. And a lot of these guys they're kind of insular and quiet. The guy that I did a documentary on, he's a really interesting character. He's got a Fairchild trainer in his back garage that he flies, and he's trying to do direct consumer, and he has an Airbnb. Actually, he converted his parents' farmhouse into an Airbnb, and he does tours. So that's how he's kept his farm alive. But
yeah,
you need a
yeah,
creative business mind to stop thinking about the seven areas and say
yeah,
how can I get people to my farm? And if you can do it, you're going to survive, but it's not easy.
yeah. I've got cousins in Wyoming who are cattle ranchers, and it's the same sort of thing. They have this. Their property is absolutely beautiful, and then it's not quite as bad as the dairy industry, but the margins are tighter and tighter and tighter. They've talked about taking advantage of this property, of having some cabins where people can come out and actually experience their life there it's a big jump though, because they're pretty tied down with just what they're trying to do. It really is an alternative way to support. And you have the property already. You actually have the settings and So I hope that we've always wanted to have folks like that because we want to see them keep their property and but do adapt to be able to support themselves on that property.
Well, yeah, and I'll kind of wrap this up here for you because I know you got to go. You kind of you've tapped into something there. Like people want authentic experiences with locals. Isn't that the essence of American travel today?
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
What's next for you?
Well, the next, we're actually doing some improvements on the train car. We're adding a sauna and a hot tub to the train car. So we're actually enhancing what we already have. And really, for me, when a historic building presents itself and it's the right one, I'll jump on it just because I like it. Obviously, I can see that it can be made to work somehow. I don't have a specific one in mind, but when it does present itself, I think we're in a position to go to work on another one. We kind of spent the last really couple years consolidating just the properties that we got up and operational, but then working on them to be more inviting to people and just even infrastructure things that we needed to do just to know that they're going to be reliable when we host people. So that's what we've been doing for the last about 2 years since we got our properties up. The train car was always up and going, but some of the others we've just been trying to enhance. So I really can't say the next thing, but if it has to do with history then I'll probably be jumping on it.
Are there any other properties like that, like historic properties or unique properties that you keep an eye on from anywhere else in the country that you'd recommend I look into?
Um, hey, as far as ones that people are renting out, I know of someone in Colorado who's restoring an old train car only because they read about me, and so they kind of have sent me updates. I think they're doing it just for themselves. I don't know that it's to rent, but it's a big. They're doing a nice job, and they're just kind of taking their time doing it as they can. Um, let's see. There probably is, and Uh, I'm not jumping on it. There. I have actually my partners in creamery. They actually have an old that it's her dad is the one who's been a friend of mine for a long time also, who originally got us on Restoration Road. He took down a pre-Revolutionary War home back in Connecticut or New York, I don't remember which. And it was an old timber frame home, and he brought it out here and reassembled it out here. So so you can stay in Idaho in the pre-Revolutionary War home, all timber framed. It's a neat one. That's another one I can put you in contact with them. I can't think of. I'll probably get off of here and think of some, but I can't think of anything right now. There's an old train depot there are a couple of train depots in this area that I keep my eyes on that someday I'd like to do something with, but I've just got to make sure I'm covering all my own bases first. So,
And where can my readers find your properties? Where are they
trains,
available?
yeah, okay, there are two of them. Visit Deary.com, VISITDEARY.com, and trainstays.us. Both give you access to most of the train properties we have.
Great. Perfect. Well, I'm going to need to get up there. I want to bring my family up there. I'm going to try to find a weekend that's hopefully is available now after that Twitter thread. It's probably going to be hard, but I will find one and get up there and meet you in person and see your town for sure.
Come on up. We'll have a place for you.